Hello and welcome to Markets Today. My name is Odhiambo Ramogi and I'll be your host. Looking at the macro environment in the year 2021, we had some significant shifts. The president narrated how his government has made efforts to ensure that the macro environment is good for business and that there has been significant growth in GDP since he took over leadership. We are discussing the macro environment and our expectations for 2022. To join me in this conversation is Mr. Abraham Mudogo. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, you did.
Excellent. Karibu sana to Markets Today. Let's start off with your feelings about the economic environment in the year 2021, the year that was.
We are now in 20. Yeah, the year is just about to end.
Yes.
I think it's been a very unpredictable year, given that there are a lot of unknowns when we were starting the year. And also it's a year that is blowing hot and cold. And by hot and cold, I mean, on one side, we are saying our economy is growing, the financial institutions are doing well. But if you go to the ground, people don't feel. If anything, they are feeling that it's getting worse. Even if you look at the inflationary figures look very mild at the basket level. But if you go to the ground again, people are also feeling the pinch. So there's a lot of disconnect. I don't know whether it's at the information level, whether it's at the reality level. But by and large, I think it's been a year that has ended in a way that nobody foresaw at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to come back to that conversation as to why there is a disparity between qua ground and the figures.
Yeah, the figures, yes.
And that conversation has been there for a long time,
yes.
Especially with this regime. And just try to understand why that is the case. Why do you think we are there? Is it an issue of inequalities? Is it an issue of corruption, or the figures have been cooked?
I think, first and foremost, if you take an example, especially if you look at our GDP growth has been driven a lot by infrastructure projects. But the structure of these infrastructure projects, I think, probably gives us the answer of what is really going on. Because let's say, for example, a project, there's Project Y that is being done by a company from country Y, country X, let's say. Now, this country is giving us a loan, but the contractor also comes from that country. So that money is disbursed to that company. And that company also has an account in that same country.
You know, you are speaking very politely.
Yes.
And politically safe.
Yes.
That country X.
Because there are several countries that are doing that. So I don't want to be specific. So my point being that whereas on the ground we have infrastructure, the money that goes with it, the cash that goes with it never gets here.
And so we do not have the multiplier effect.
Yeah, the multiplier effect is reduced. So that you find, and then also a good chunk of those inputs also come from the same countries, or countries that are friendly to those countries. So
some countries import even mboga, vegetables.
Because aren't we eating Chinese fish? And we have a lot of, we have fish we can never finish from Lake Victoria. So some of the problems. But now, the effect of that is that out of maybe 100 billion, maybe what trickles down here is very little. Maybe what you pay wages here and a few small subcontracts. But the chunk of that money never leaves the host country. But then now that comes and now is compounded by the fact that now that loan again has been paid from our scarce resources back to that country. So you can see that where that squeeze is coming from.
Yeah.
So for me, that probably answers the question. Because if you go to the ground and as you're saying, there's still a disconnect. But I think it's something I think we need to discuss on this program.
Are there significant inequalities that are, quote unquote, disfiguring the economy?
Yes. I think one of the biggest problems that is bringing these distortions is our information asymmetry and how we collect data. Because, you see, don't forget, even these growth models that we have, most of them are either World Bank, IMF based, because so that we're able to compare like to like.
Yeah.
Now, those models are very heavy on data input. Now, we all know here that Kenya is driven by the MSME, the micro and small. And 50%, if not more, are below radar. So if you're collecting data on MSME and their turnover, you're probably missing half the chunk.
Yeah.
So if that is the data you put into that model, then that model might show something that is milder. Or on the side of growth, it might show something that is milder. But even on the side of how much cash or how much thing we have, it will also under report that. So that's what creates that situation. That's why you'll see sometimes you'll see the figures are showing very low growth, but when you go to the ground, or especially if you go to, you'll find people are still surviving. Mm-hmm. You'll find that an economy that is not supposed to be even breathing is doing very well. So that disconnect is about that the issue of data collection and not appreciating that our economy, most of it is informal, and there are people who thrive on being below the radar.
I've tried to push you into the discussion of inequalities, but more and more I'm hearing that it is there is disparity in data. The data we are collecting, there's a lot of disparity, and that there is money that is supposed to come in. It's called the poor debt dynamics.
Yes.
Because we have a debt burden, but the money which is supposed to come circulate in the economy and create growth to pay the debt is not coming. Interesting. But we still have a very sterling performance registered in the first quarter of 2021.
Yes.
And I think even the second quarter, I've seen somewhere 10.1%. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that growth could be driven by several things. And the biggest chunk of it was the fact that the year preceding was an abnormal year. And I think that's the discussion we are creating. I think we should compare 2021 to 2019 and skip 2020 altogether. Because 2020 creates an impression that 2021 is a good year.
Which it is not.
Which it is not. And 2022 now you can see what it is about. We are starting 2022 again not knowing how 2020 is going to end. So the distortion of comparing a very weak guy with a very strong guy is what we are doing. I think we should compare two strong guys and see who is actually stronger.
Yeah.
But we are comparing a weak with a strong. No matter how not strong this guy is, he'll still be stronger than this weak guy. So 2020, even if you look at most institutions, they are not using it as a base year. But again, now going back to the issue of inequalities, I think what this pandemic has done, it's not created it; it has exposed it. I think it's always been there, and we've always spoken about the middle class, and I think the middle class does exist, but I think it is under a lot of pressure because even I was in a mall, one of the malls along Thika Road, and the amount of spending that was going on. I mean, I really could not, I really as an economist could not understand where these people are getting this money from. And you could see these are just ordinary Kenyans. As I'm telling you, there's something we are missing. That either this is an economy I think that is extremely resilient. And I think it's time now we started drilling deep and coming up with a model that actually explains why we are still the way we are, given whatever is going on.
I think just on that conversation, there's the part where we are a very broad-based economy and not dependent on, say, mineral deposits or one sector.
Yes.
And I think that plays a part, no?
It does. It does in that sense. And also remember, remittances from abroad, instead of dipping, have gone up.
Surprising.
And remember also that this is what is formally reported. So you're probably talking about a chunk bigger, equal to or bigger than that has come below. So maybe that's what is fueling us. You know, I'm telling you, we really need to do a deep dive and find out what is really, really driving our economy.
Forgive me for, deviating.
Yes.
In the 2008 recession, 2008-2009, yes. There was a report in the US that the drug business drove the economy significantly.
Yes.
And it actually is what made that economy to survive. At that time, I think the drug business was 30 to 40% driving the economy. Mm-hmm. Could we be looking at a possibility where our economy right now is being driven by crime? I don't know, some piracy money from Somalia, some counterfeit money, some drug money, God forbid.
I think maybe not even necessarily that. This foreign remittances to me is something I really try to understand, because money keeps coming. Money keeps coming. But see, it's all called remittances. But what really are they? What really is this money? Why are people so keen to bring money here? You've seen in the paper there are now two cases of people sending $1 million to someone as a gift. Now there's a second case.
Yes.
So there's this drive to bring money to this country. So there's an attraction to bring it here, and there's a morbid desire to send it. So could that be driving us? Maybe, maybe not. And then don't forget, there's a time there's a lot of illicit money running around. So how much of it is still pending?
The money from Somalia.
So I think we really need to bring that. But again, now the challenge with that is that if you can't see them, you can't count them. So how do we count what we don't even know whether it exists or not? We can feel the effect, but really we can't touch it. But we must develop our own model that explains what happens here. Yes, there's IMF or the World Bank models, but we can domesticate it to work for us.
Fair enough. Inflation has remained significantly stable in the year. This is perhaps a surprise, considering the fact that our harvest has not been as bounty as we had hoped. But we are not really making a lot of goods as before. I don't know what your thoughts are on the inflation rates.
You see, we put the bands at 2.5, I mean, at 5% plus or minus 2.5%. So above 2.5% and below 7.5%, nobody speaks about inflation. And we've been there all through.
Yeah.
So that's what has helped us so far. So on paper, our inflation is acceptable. Let's use that word. but the question is, this figure is arrived at based on a basket. To me, it is that basket that we need to revise. One, what we put into that basket, and two, what weights we put to the things we put into that basket. Because it's starting to disconnect from the ground. My wife does a cake business, and if you look at the costs of all her inputs have gone up by 50%. So if you tell her that Kenya's inflation is 6%, she'll not believe you, because she's feeling a 50% increment on her entire cost base. And that is reverberating into many sectors in this country. So the question then begs is, why are we insisting on the basket that we used to have? That basket, maybe some things need to be thrown out and some things thrown in, or include some more. But again, also, how do we distribute the weights around that? Because maybe that's what is contributing to this thing staying between 2.5 and 7.5. And you can see even worldwide, the inflationary pressure is everywhere. So we cannot be immune or in isolation of whatever is going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting angle, considering the fact that our economy has significantly grown. We have rebased now significantly. And so we are talking of a $10 billion economy.
Yes.
But the basket has not been adjusted or improved on over the years. So then we find ourselves in a position where we are measuring a 10 trillion economy with the basket of less than 100.
Yes, that's what we're doing. I think we urgently need to revise that basket. But I guess also, I don't think we are the first to think that. But I think the ramifications of doing that now would probably produce a double-digit inflationary number. And then that will create its own problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for now, I think let sleeping dogs lie.
And you agree with the Treasury in those terms?
No, for now, you know, sometimes I think if you already have enough dogs walking around, let the ones lying, let them lie. Yeah.
So that then you can at least survive for another day.
Yes.
Let's talk currency.
Okay.
Of course, inflation now informs currency. We are seeing more and more devaluation of the Kenyan currency. I don't know whether it is, perhaps let me just ask, what are the factors behind this?
You see, there are several factors. Number one, remember inflation, first of all, plays into that number. That's number one. Number two, there's been, especially at quarter ends, when people are remitting their dividends, when there's capital flight at the stock exchange, which is happening now because people again are cashing in because of election year.
Yeah.
So that creates the pressure on the dollar. And then remember, we either increase our exports or reduce our imports. I don't think our imports are about to reduce anytime soon because of the models that we are using in terms of fuel manufacturing. We import a lot of our inputs. So our exports also are not increasing that much. So even if you look at the deficit, it doesn't shift much. But again, the price of oil. But thank God it seems to be dipping. But again, we don't respond as fast to a decrease in price as the way we respond to an increase in price in oil. That's a discussion for another day. So again, that's building into that pressure. But by and large, I think it's also high time we accepted that we are an agricultural-based country and do more in terms of expanding the value chain.
Yeah.
So as to create backward and forward linkages and include more people in the production, not in the value chain, in the sense that let's have people in the chain who do not necessarily have to understand agriculture. They don't have to understand how coffee is grown, but can create a marketplace, can create can reduce the time, and it can just bring in value without necessarily having to just grow. Because all we do is grow it, store it, export it.
Yeah.
Raw. And that goes to every product, including products like fish. Avocado. Avocado is gold in the world now. I was over the weekend, I'd gone to visit my auntie, and she tells me sometimes one avocado goes as low as 2 shillings. In the European market now, especially like now, it's winter, you can buy it for as high as 3 to 4 euro. Now look at that disparity. It tells you that
That's like 100 times.
Yeah, so and that's just raw. So if you look at avocado oil or guacamole, now you're talking about ridiculous figures. And there's nothing rocket science about it. It's just pulping and storing and sending it. So, and we can do that for every, we can make Nescafe come here. The same way in Ghana, they just told them, you know what, chocolate needs cocoa, as they call it. So if you want it, you come here. If you don't want it, then you grow it where you are. And of course, they cannot grow it where they are, so they've come.
Absolutely.
So even here, we can have the Nescafes and the everybody's come here. Because this is the home of coffee. This is the home of tea. And home of many other things.
Well, a significant number of them are here, but are just shipping it home.
Precisely. They are still shipping it raw. All they are doing is they're concocting it so that it conforms to the input to the input requirements of their factories elsewhere. We want them to produce it here and ship it value added to wherever it is that they're shipping it to. Yeah. After all, their biggest market is Africa. Yeah, truth be told, those things go and still come back. So why don't we produce it here? And now with the free trade area, that's easy to distribute.
So that's a very interesting discovery. But as you said, it's a conversation for another day.
It is.
There are two things that come out of what you said. One is the capital flight at NSE. I was having a conversation with a colleague in the industry, and he was telling me that there is no such thing. It's a creation of the media.
You see, you know, numbers don't lie.
They don't.
Yeah, numbers don't lie. So if he's saying it's not true, then let him show us the numbers that don't say that, because it is true. If you look at the indices, everything shows. And again, the boss has its own problems in terms of concentration.
Yeah,
you talk about 5 counters: Safaricom, Coop, Equity, and I think Equity, and I think two others, EABL being one of them. So just those are the ones that control probably 80% of the business that goes on, because of its liquidity and because of people like them. So when those are on the downward slide, you cannot tell me that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
which means there is more supply.
Yeah, there's supply. Yeah. So the thing is, that is the truth, and that's what's happening. And it is a psychology, because Kenyans, we don't also help ourselves. I mean, we start electioneering as soon as we swear in as a president. We start election. So those guys have known that in election year, let me take my money, go and sit and wait. and then bring it back. So and that is exactly
when we come back, I want us to discuss more about that, because the general feeling has been that our market has grown significantly resilient. But we must take a break.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing the macro environment in the country 2021, 2022, and I'm joined by Abraham Mudhogo. We are taking a short break, and when we come back, we will talk more about resilience, but we'll also talk more about our expectations for 2022. Do join us in a few.